Hello, everyone. My name is Megan Goss, and I serve as a Michigan State University Extension educator in the Saginaw Bay region. And as Luke referenced, we will be recording this webinar and sharing it with all registrants. So please share the webinar recording. We'll be sending out all 3 webinars from the series at one time. So please share those with any partners in your networks. We want to have the content shared as widely as possible. We will also be live tweeting the webinar on our Facebook and also on Twitter. So if you are an active user, feel free to share any of those posts. And to give more background on the project, this project launched in 2015 and is supported by the NOAA Coastal Storms Project. It was launched by a series of surveys that were given to decision makers and planners in the Saginaw Bay region about their perceptions of extreme storms and flooding. And through the project, we've had a lot of local partner support from the Saginaw Bay Coastal Initiative, Bay County Emergency Management Division, East Michigan Council of Government, and Midland County Emergency Management Division. So we want to thank all of our partners for the support throughout this webinar, and we also want to extend our thanks to all of the different webinars presenters that have shared information with attendees via the platform. And for today's webinar, we are very lucky to have Molly O'Toole being our lead presenter, sharing information about the National Flood Insurance Program's community rating system. She has been involved with this program since 1991, and she has a wide variety of experience in water resources, watershed management, and hazard mitigation for over the past 30 years. So I would like to thank Molly for presenting about the community rating system to us, and we will shortly be transitioning over to her after a series of polls. So with our first poll, we are interested in finding out why you are here. So this is a multiple choice, and there are 3 questions with this poll. So with the first question, you have an option to choose why you're interested in here, and you can check multiple responses if you would like, if you feel like you have multiple reasons for why you're interested here. Thank you for sharing the results so everyone can see. So you can see the majority are government employees. You have some partners from the Saginaw Bay watershed, but we also have others from out, and this information with the community rating system can be useful in other areas, but the majority of the content will be geared for the Saginaw Bay watershed. And with the municipal level, it looks like either the county or other were the majorities. So thank you so much for completing this poll. And now we can transition over to our key presenter, Molly O'Toole, who will share information about the community rating system with us.
Thank you, Megan. I closed out the poll, and thank you to everyone who's joining us today. The Federal Emergency Management Agency manages a number of programs, and the National Flood Insurance Program is one of them, and the Community Rating System is a program that falls under that. So any community that is part of the National Flood Insurance Program can participate in the CRS. As Megan said, my name is Molly O'Toole. I'm currently the lead consultant to FEMA and to the Insurance Services Office on the community rating system. And I split my time between Illinois and Michigan, and my email address is there if you have any questions. But as we go through, I'm going to reference another woman named Tracy Bolonja, who is the ISO person assigned to the state of Michigan, and she will be very helpful as you go forward if you'd like to explore this program further. So as an overview, we're going to talk a little bit about the basics. We're going to dive into what is our most important document in the program. That's our coordinator's manual. We'll talk some about the different variety of CRS credits that we offer, the kinds of class ratings that people can get. We always like to talk about costs and benefits of the program, because with all programs there are costs, but we hope communities determine that their benefits exceed their costs. We'll talk just briefly about how to apply to the program. It's a process, and there's several steps to it, but very straightforward steps. And then each community that participates has to name a community CRS coordinator to be responsible for the program. And we'd like to talk a little bit about that, what that means to be truly a coordinator and coordinate within your community. And then we'll go through some of the resources that we offer to help you with the program. So as I said, the CRS is a FEMA program, part of the National Flood Insurance Program, but what's very important is it's voluntary. People participate in the National Flood Insurance Program to be eligible for disaster assistance and also eligible for federally backed federal flood insurance. But then the CRS and the discounts that it offers is entirely voluntary, and communities can opt to join and certainly opt to no longer be part of the program. But in the end, it reduces flood insurance premiums where you have better floodplain management. And when we say better floodplain management, we mean that you exceed what the minimum requirements of the NFIP are for communities. And one of the most basic requirements of the NFIP is that all new construction in the special flood hazard area be built to at least the base flood elevation. And some of you may be familiar with the FEMA maps, and those are where those base flood elevations are established. So anything you do that's above and beyond that effort, we like to credit. As I mentioned, the program's administered by the Insurance Services Office Incorporated. They are a big insurance data company, and they have a group of 18 specialists assigned to different states. We'll show you how to see their contact information in a little bit. And then there's a consultant team of me and my folks that assist ISO. The CRS has 3 goals, and with whatever we do, we run back to these 3 goals and make sure that what we do is helping accomplish these. If it doesn't, we sort of take a pass and reconsider down the road as technologies or things change. But our first goal is to reduce and avoid damage to insurable properties. It's certainly one of the goals of the NFIP, and it is a goal of our program. Anything that you do through communications, regulations, projects that reduce damage, we want to credit in this program. But we're part of a national flood insurance program, so we want to strengthen and support the insurance aspects. Anything that can help people get a better insurance rating and insurance rate and know what kind of insurance to get, we certainly want to have this program support flood insurance and the sale of flood insurance. And then last, we want to foster comprehensive floodplain management. And when we say floodplain management anymore, we really do mean watershed management. So for the Saginaw Bay, we're not just talking about the coastal areas, not just talking about those special flood hazard areas, but talking about all the areas of the watershed, whether they are just urban runoff, rural runoff, the wetland areas, the riparian areas, everything. We want to foster that total watershed management. So again, we're a rating program, and the ratings that we give to the about 1,500 communities that participate in the program are available on the FEMA website, but they're also published in FEMA's flood insurance manual. So when an insurance agent opens up the manual, looks up your community, she determines if he or she determines if there is a CRS discount for you. And 70%, you'll see a slide on this later, but about 70% of all the flood insurance policies written in our nation are included within CRS communities. And so we're one of the few programs in the country that rates a community on what they're doing, whether it's resiliency, whether it's bond ratings, whatever, fire insurance ratings, and the fire insurance program is a program that the CRS is modeled after. Those go into data where insurance companies decide how they want to set premiums for that community or that part of the country. But ours is a little different. We have an established set of premium discounts that you can get based on your CRS class. And this slide describes those. So people who don't participate in the program are a class 10. Some communities who have participated before and they opt not to, they go back down to a class 10. But you need 500 points to make the first class a class 9. And see a 5% discount in the special flood hazard area. For B, C, D, and X zones, it's a 5% discount as well, and then you see how that changes as you go up in class. So for example, class 5 communities need 2,500 points. They see a 25% discount in the floodplain, and then a 10% discount outside the floodplain. PRPs are called preferred risk policies, and they're very low-cost policies for areas that have never been flooded, or maybe areas newly mapped, and you can get this very, very good rate for those policies. And so we don't discount those with CRS because they're already so far discounted. So here's our next poll. I can pop back to the previous slide if anybody needs me to, but actually basically for every class, it's another 500 points, and it's another 5% discount. So remember, class 10 is 0, class 9 is 500 points, class 8 is 1,000 points. So then for class 7, you would need to have how many points is our first question. And again, going on that 5, 10, 15% discount, what would the discount be in the second question? Very good. Okay, there are the results. So I'm going to quickly pop back to the previous slide. The questions are, how many points do you need to be a class 7, and what's your discount? So when I go back, and I'm going to go ahead and just close this poll. For class 7, it's 1,500 points, and it's a 15% discount. Class 7 isn't a bad class for us, for communities within the CRS. And so here are how the classes fall out now. Right now, there are 1,486 communities. As I said, that captures over 70% of all the flood insurance policies written. The majority of communities are a class 8 currently. This used to be a much larger number for class 8, and we're quickly watching communities move up to class 7, class 6. You see we have a lot at class 5. Not so many at class 4 and better, because we apply some prerequisites when you can go beyond the 25% discount and get up into the bigger discounts, all the way to the one community that we have at a 45% discount. Here is our national map. You can see the bulk of communities are in Florida. There's about 250 communities that participate in Florida, a lot along the Atlantic seacoast, a lot in the Chicago area. And then we see the couple concentrations for Michigan in the greater Detroit area, and then in the Saginaw Bay area. This is a map of Michigan that was one of your handouts for today. It shows the communities that participate in the program in blue and in green. We tried to capture the municipalities as well as the shading of the counties, and so we don't show any counties participating here. And then the red squares are communities with the higher policies written, the total number of policies in the community, whether in the SFHA or the PRPs, and whether or not they participate. So this kind of lays out maybe who should be participating based on the number of residents that might benefit. This is just a little zoom in of that map. This map, actually all the maps in the bar chart I just showed you, are available at our program website. We are part of the FEMA.gov website. You can go to FEMA.gov and Google CRS or Community Rating System. But we also have the CRSresources.org page that provides things that go with our manual and go with the program, and a little quicker ready reference. So you can find those maps under the 100 series page. But most important on the website is a copy of our coordinator's manual. The coordinator's manual describes everything about the program, our activities, the credits, our criteria, the documentation that needs to be provided. There's a home page there that you can go to, and you'll find the links, plus the link to the manual, plus the links to one of the handouts that you have today and some other summary handouts. Our manuals have an expiration date. Our current manual expires in March 2020. We update them pretty much every 3 years to incorporate new ideas, new technologies, or adjust points. We had a large change in the manual in 2013 to account for the changes in our program that have taken place over the last 25 years. So we're a 25-year-old program, actually a 27-year-old program now, and still growing. This is that coordinator's manual download page on CRS Resources. You'll see at the bottom of the screen those summary items, and you have the master list of elements. But it's a huge manual, 600 some pages, but very well organized. This is a copy of the table of contents. Today we're going to focus on talking about some of the items in the introduction and the procedures, but then it goes on to talk about our different activities, and you can learn more about those at some of our other webinars. So don't be intimidated by the size of the manual. It's very accessible. It has an index in the back. There are a number of things that help you maneuver and find what you want. Because we're a national program, we also try and incorporate a lot of things that might not apply. Alluvial fans might not apply in Michigan, but they certainly apply in the arid West. Coastal issues may not be a concern in Kansas, but they are in the Great Lakes states, and they are in the total of 34 coastal states that we have in our country. So we have 4 series of activities. The first one is about public information. We know that when people know more about floods and flood insurance, that they will take action. When they know more about what to do about floods, they will take action to do things to prevent flood damage. Our largest credit activity is mapping and regulations. This is for when you have better maps, excellent regulations, protect from open space. And again, when we say regulations, those are those that go above just building at the BFE. We focus a lot on higher standards, but we also focus a lot on the natural functions of floodplains and the protection of open space and the creation of open space. The 500 series focuses on flood damage, your existing flood damages, and what you're doing to address those, whether those are buyouts, elevating structures, flood-proofing structures, maintaining your drainage system. And then the 600 series is for the emergency managers. It addresses warning response, whether it be just for a regular flood-related occurrence in your community or those related to dams and to levees. This is where the coordinator would coordinate with the emergency manager. Most CRS coordinators aren't emergency folks, but we want you to involve all aspects of your community's mitigation approaches. So there's a total of 19 activities under those 4 series, something for everyone, and a total of 94 elements. So we're structured by series. Within each series, there are a number of activities, which within each activities, there are a number of elements, and those elements are what we credit to get to your 500 points. The summary handout, your first 500 points, and then your subsequent 500 points, pardon me. But this is the master list of elements that was a handout today. It describes all of the 94 elements, and it also shows, you can get this at crasresources.org, and it also shows the maximum credit available for each of those activities. So if you want to look around the program and determine where you can get most credit, certainly go look at that. But one thing we do incorporate into all of our credit is an impact adjustment. How much of your community does this address? How far does the activity or element we're giving you credit for reach into your floodplain? What percentage, for example, is open space? So now I'll jump a little bit to operation, how you get started, how you get going. Our application is not a lot of paperwork. It's quite straightforward. Your application is really when ISO comes to visit with you and sit down and learn about what you're already implementing. That verification visit happens when you join the program, and then in another usually 5 years, for some communities with a very large discount, it's every 3 years. But then each year we ask you to recertify. Tell us that you're continuing to do what you said you did when we came to the verification visit. If you take on new things in between verification visits, we call that a modification, and you can tell Tracy about that, and she will come in and determine if she needs to actually visit you again, or if you can just be re-rated to a better class. And then we swing back every 3 to 5 years, as I mentioned, take a fresh look at things. Maybe your floodplain has changed. Maybe you've bought out some structures. Maybe you have adopted a new ordinance. Maybe your emergency managers have done more for mapping, and we'll try and see where we can't give you more and additional credit for the new things that you've taken on. This is just a little refresher of our little 19 activities, just to have it on a slide so people can see it when they come back and look at this. And so let's jump to costs and benefits then, and we'll start with costs. So one thing required before a community is eligible to join the community rating system is that they be in full compliance with the NFIP requirements. So to do that, either the state of Michigan or Region 5 of FEMA would come by and do something called a community assistance visit. They come and talk to you, they look at your ordinance, they look at your maps, they drive around your floodplain and make sure that any development taking place and any thing that you've done in response to floods or substantial damage is being addressed, and they determine if you're eligible. So that's a cost, just taking the time for FEMA to come by and visit you. They may come by and do that community assistance visit, even if you're not interested in CRS, but but they do come and be a little bit more thorough when you're interested in joining our program. Then there's the time of the CRS coordinator to coordinate with everyone they need to coordinate with FEMA, coordinate with ISO. We don't make any secret about this. It does take some time, and we do talk about something called burden hours that we need to put towards the program. Of course, there's the time to implement the activities that we're going to give you credit for. But for the most part, the activities are things you're already doing. For example, we give credit for building codes. If you're already implementing a building code, CRS shouldn't be any additional cost for that. If you already have a drainage maintenance program, there shouldn't be much additional cost for CRS other than providing the documentation for it. If you choose to take on new activities, sometimes communities do call that a cost, but they're also able then to look at the discount that goes with those efforts. As I mentioned, we require some documentation. We require you to maintain some records, maybe in a little bit different format that you have, but we do make an effort to work with how you already do business in your community and make sure that we can credit you as best we can with what you have. The recertifying every year takes some time. You get a packet in the mail, you get some requests for information. You have to assemble all that and send that back in. And of course, participating in the verification visits, this would be the CRS coordinator, but it also might be other departments. It might be the emergency manager coming by. It might be your GIS person having to come help put together a map. But then when we look at benefits, we know that when we address flood damages and when we reduce the costs of flood insurance, that most often that money stays right in the community. That's other things that people can do to invest into their property or shop within town. And so how do you know what that amount is, what you could possibly save for different CRS classes? Well, we offer something called the CRS What If Statements. This is an example for the city of Longmont in Colorado, but it looks much the same for every community. So if this community, Longmont, were to be a Class 9, they would save an average of $43 per policy and $11,000 as a community. And then when you go to the bottom of the screen and see if they were Class 5, that number would go to $52,000 that they'd be saving in premiums. Now, when we jump to some of our very large communities like Miami-Dade County, these numbers go into the 5s and 10s of millions of dollars that people save in policy discounts because there are so many policies. But if you're interested in knowing what you could possibly save, Tracy Melonja can look this up for you and provide that to you. It's worth looking at, even if you're not interested, in joining the program at this time. She can still assist you with what that looks like. This slide shows a list of our other benefits that we've identified through the years. We know that insurance savings offsets a lot of the costs that you put into the program. We know that there's a benefit to better organized programs. I think many of us as government officials know that a regulation is only as good as to the level that's enforced. We know that's true with flood things too. You can have a stack of flood information brochures at your office, but if you don't share them with people, then they really don't do you much good. Through the CRS program, we offer a lot of technical assistance. We can do courtesy reviews, we can provide advice, we have an awful lot of training that may directly go towards CRS, but may directly help you in addressing flood mitigation, watershed management, etc. We know that the public information that we share builds big constituency. We know that a lot of things that we do in CRS tend to bring residents in, tend to bring more people to meetings and to tables and to brainstorming. And then we know that the CRS and not wanting to lose a CRS class provides a lot of incentive to communities. So we're very happy about that. So the reduction in premium can be between 5 and 45%. But another thing that we like to point out is this graphic here, that when somebody is requiring flood insurance, perhaps because they're building and their mortgage lender requires them to have insurance, that when they're below the BFE on the left-hand side of the screen, premium rates can be astronomical, $9,500 a year. And then when we're at the BFE, we see a huge savings, an 85% savings in that amount. And then it continues to go up when we're looking at having freeboard, and this example has 3 feet of freeboard. So the difference even from the middle house at BFE to the one with free board of paying $1,410 a year for insurance to $427 is pretty large. But then we get to add the CRS discount on top of that too. So those numbers just get better and better. We don't like to use the word affordable because we know for many people, insurance is never affordable, but it does significantly reduce the cost and make it be something that people can then maybe reconsider and think about. We know the quickest way to recover from a disaster is to have insurance. So the property protection credits shown on this screen are just some examples of the different things with their activities that go with them that we can credit and certainly can help your community in reducing your flood losses, increasing awareness, having people be smarter about their investments. So now we'll switch to one poll. And in this poll, we're asking, of those benefits that we've talked about, money staying in your community, insurance offsetting costs, which of those would be important to you? And now we're at 85%, and we always see a variety of answers on this one. I didn't put an other on this poll. Sometimes we have people go for the other, but quite equally, people are happy about the savings to residents. But oftentimes communities say, well, you know, that money's for residents. That money's not in the pocket, not in the community's budget. But still, these other things are important to me. I have better organized programs. I have incentives to keep doing what I'm doing. And one thing that we find is, especially when there's, say, a watershed initiative, a regional agency, a stormwater authority that charges taxes for their stormwater efforts or their regional flood control efforts, that when they can say that those additional fees or taxes that people are paying into those groups get almost refunded back to people in their CRS discount, that's a good thing. There's a lot of support for that, and we see that in many parts of the country. We see a lot of that in Illinois, Colorado, Texas, California, the big flood control agencies, and stormwater utilities like Louisville and St. Louis, etc. Okay, so where to begin if you're interested? Even if you're not yet interested and you just want to learn more, call Tracy. Here's her cell phone number and her email address. These are people's best resources for answering questions. They can help explain what maybe Midland or Saginaw or other participants in the program in Michigan have received credit for. She can point you in the right direction for a number of things. Make sure you visit the website, get a copy of the coordinator's manual. It's a PDF document, very well indexed, very well bookmarked. It's easy to maneuver, and you can certainly read the front pages and learn more about the program. We include the prerequisites of the program. I'll have a slide for them in a little bit, but you need to check for that community assistance visit with FEMA or the state. So don't hesitate to call your state NFIP coordinator or FEMA Region 5. Here are those prerequisites that I talked about. You do have to be in the NFIP, obviously. The number 2 there is being in full compliance, the CAB we talked about. Number 3 is agreeing to maintain elevation certificates. And elevation certificates are some things that some permit departments already require and others can start requiring, but insurance agents do require these. It's a FEMA form, and we want you to collect them for all your new construction or substantial improvements in the floodplain, and make sure they're complete. The hardest thing about insurance or elevation certificates is oftentimes they have a lot of blanks, and it doesn't help the rating of the property, and it doesn't help to understand that they're compliant. So we want to see you help maintain complete elevation certificates. Repetitive loss flood properties are something that are growing in the nation as floods go on and up and up. And if you have more than 10 repetitive loss properties, we ask you to do a little bit of mapping and understand why certain neighborhoods are having repetitive flood loss problems. It's a straightforward requirement, but it is a prerequisite. And then for community buildings that you own, not the schools if the school district are different, but your community buildings, your community's fire station, city hall, library, we want you to maintain flood insurance on those. For coastal communities, if FEMA comes by and wants to, or says that they have a limited to moderate wave action line to put on your flood insurance rate map, you have to accept that line being put on there. That line today means that there might be additional building codes in the Model I codes for construction in those areas, and we want to see you meet the code requirements and put those LIMWA lines on your map. Back to our list of where to start. So then start identifying what you're already doing. This isn't a program that we recommend you dive into and taking on new things right away. Just look at what you do and see where your rating would be. Go talk to other offices, see what they're doing. Maybe you don't know what the public works folks are doing. Maybe you're not familiar with what the emergency managers are doing. Share with them the manual or encourage them to visit some of our webinars and see what they can incorporate. Verify the support from upstairs is talk to your elected officials. And one thing that we offer on our CRS Resources website and also on the FEMA website is a little 5-minute, 10-minute overview pocket guide of the program that explains a lot of what I've talked today. Maybe they'd like to look at that and learn a little bit more about why to participate. But to start your application then, really, even before the CAV or after the CAV, is a letter of interest. And we have a sample letter of interest on our website, but that comes from your community CEO and goes to FEMA in the state and tells us, please consider us for the program, and then we start the rest of the process. One thing required with that letter of interest is a document that tells us you think you could get at least 500 points. And we have a little quick check that we call it that helps describe the things that other communities are getting credit for that gets their 500 points. And you can kind of walk through this list and just do a little bird's eye view of your community's program and help assure us that you can get 500 points and meet that class 9. So again, that community assistance visit may have to happen, but maybe it's already happened and maybe you're not going to need it. But at some point, FEMA approves you participating in the program and tells ISO, yes, please go meet with that community and rate them. And then the community, the CEO, either before or after that whole effort does need to pick a CRS coordinator for the community. So a little bit about who that coordinator should be and really who that role is. It's really someone who needs to be appointed as the contact, the primary point of contact for the verification visit and for the recertification, but also has some authority to answer for the chief executive officer, to sign some forms and say, yes, indeed, our community does do these efforts. Ideally, it's someone familiar with the NFIP, and ideally, it's someone recognizable to the CEO. So it could be an elected official, employees, former employees, and the bottom of that list on this screen is citizen volunteers. We have had citizens do this before, but of course, we'd like the CEO to know them a little bit too. But some of this on who you pick is based on your community size and the available time that you have. We see some large communities spread the coordinator efforts across a number of offices. We see other communities have the clerk do it. So it really ranges depending on the community and the staff. And we certainly understand that some communities have part-time staff. And so you can certainly approach the coordinator effort as a regional effort, have one community do a couple of communities, those sorts of things. But if you pop over to crsresources.org, under the 200 series page, you'll find a little bit more on our expectations and community expectations for the CRS coordinator. Back to a little bit more about focusing on the word of coordinator. We want the person who is your coordinator to run around to all the different departments and involve everybody. We have a handout for the GIS folks to understand what they need to map from what I mentioned before, that impact adjustment map. We have some guides for what we want the public works people to be doing, and the building and floodplain management and the planning department, we know might all be different places. We know they might be one. But as we collect elevation certificates and make decisions about what's going on in our floodplain, we know that those departments need to talk to each other, and there's a lot of credit for their efforts, so we hope that the coordinator is working with all of them. And then don't forget, we do give credit for state efforts. If the state requires something and they can show us that all communities implement it, we just give you the credit. It's called state-based credit, and that's just yours. It's every community in the state. If there's regional groups, watershed groups, regional flood control districts, we credit with that too. When I mentioned stream maintenance, for example, if a county for your community does a lot of the maintenance, or a township does a lot of the maintenance for your municipality, we'll credit that as well. I refer to county a lot, and we understand that states like Michigan are strong township states. We see that in Dakotas, we see that in other places. So we often lump the townships in with the county, but we certainly know that in Michigan, the townships are the NFIP participants. And then the hazard mitigation plans that may be countywide efforts, outreach projects, maybe as a statewide effort, stream maintenance, again, is the example that I used as a county or township maybe. We want to credit all those things. So there's a little bit of hunting to see what you can do. But again, Tracy can help you know what other communities have done within Michigan for their credit. So then last is the verification visit. As I mentioned, we talked about how often that happens. And even though ISO is the lead service provider on this, FEMA makes the final decision on whether or not you get your CRS class. For new coordinators or a new community, whatever, if you want to capture a little bit of what I said in about a 6-page document on crsresources.org, we have this small communities guide. It applies to large communities too. It focuses on what you're already doing. Go visit crsresources.org and pick it up and see where you can't start and where you end up. This is just a very fast example of what an impact adjustment map means. You'll see this image in our manual, but it kind of has in yellow what's the developable area. The other areas that are marked out in bold are municipal lines and beaches that we give credit for. But we have you take a look at your floodplain and say, what do we have going on in it? What areas do we regulate? What parks do we protect? Where are the golf courses? Those sorts of things, and you can get a nice sense of what's going on in your community. Last, make use of other folks. Besides the ISO folks, talk to the state people, talk to the FEMA people, learn more about what's going on, learn from the other CRS communities, and then we wanted to plug our CRS users groups. And I'll jump to that in just a second. But on our 100 pages, where if you don't have Tracy's information from this webinar from the previous slide, here's where you find it. Or if you're listening from another state, here's where you find it from the other state. But on the 100's general page of crsresources.org, we show the specialists by the state, their contact information, and we also have the FEMA regional coordinators that you can contact. We're jumping into resources. For resources, we offer a lot of training. Certainly today is a training opportunity, but we have a 4-day course if you want to learn everything comprehensively about all the opportunities in the CRS. We offer a 4-day course at the Emergency Management Institute in Maryland, and we also present this course in the field from time to time. I think this year, I don't think we're in Region 5, but we very well may be next year. When you go to EMI, your travel is paid for, and your meals and your housing. And so it's just your time to attend the course. I'll have a slide later on our CRS webinar series. We can also come to town. Tracy can come to town and offer a half-day course, even as long as a 2-day course. And at the Michigan State Conference this year, that I think is March 12th and 13th, she'll offer a one-on-one room where you can come and sit down and talk to her about opportunities and your level of interest, or if you're already in the program, improving in a class too. So make sure you go visit Tracy in March. For our CRS webinar series, we do a more introductory level webinar every 3rd Tuesday of the month and a more advanced one on Wednesday. You can visit our website, hit the training and videos page, and register for those. And we have a similar webinar format to the Zoom format that you're using today. You can learn about our users group on the website too, and if a users group is something that the Saginaw Bay region would like to create, we would certainly appreciate that. Different groups use their group for different purposes. Some talk and share ideas, and others use them to come together and do other training, and some come together to identify additional credit that they can jointly pursue and improve in the program. And here's a map of our users groups. Again, reminding you to go to our website. We can't say that enough, but you can pop over there and learn more about the users groups. But a new addition to our website is this Success for CRS. This may be for you, this may be for your elected officials, but our stories are divided up into categories of what kind of success the communities felt they had. There's 25 different stories. Some it's about partnerships, some it was about the ability to respond to a flood, a whole variety of things. But this should be useful for you and useful for elected officials It has quotes from different elected officials, and it's worth a look, worth the time to look at. We hope to add more stories too as time goes by. The FEMA.gov website also offers a number of resources, and it's kind of a cumbersome website to get through, but if you just get to FEMA.gov, type in the search box something like FEMA Higher Standards, you'll see a nice video about the importance of elevating higher and the importance of protecting open space. This video was done just for the purpose of higher standards, but certainly sings the praises of the community rating system, and that's worth a look too. There's a link to it, but you know, these are long, cumbersome links too. So one more poll, and this is our last poll. The first question is, where can I find more information about the CRS? And the second is, what more you'd like to learn about our program. And for the 4 of you that answered all of the above to the first question, very good. We offer everywhere we can information about the program. You can even search certain states and learn more about the CRS from them too. We have the Association of State Floodplain Managers, and their web address is floods.org. The Michigan Floodplain Management Association is a chapter member of the SFPM, but at floods.org, you can go to the Science Center. They have a CRS Green Guide. NOAA is offering resources now. The Corps of Engineers Silver Jacket is very interested and does a number of our CRS webinars at their lunchtime series. So for the second question, for the folks who want to learn more about the manual and activities, I recommend you visit our third Tuesday and third Wednesday webinars, or think about that 4-day course. Talk to Tracy. She can get you a copy of that what if statement. She can also get you additional information on the number of policies within your community too. Not the detailed information, but kind of the general information. And those of you that want to take the 4-day course, fantastic. Go to crsresources.org and visit the trainings page, and we usually list the EMI dates. The state or the field course dates, we usually put those in the CRS newsletter. If you go to the crsresources.org page and go to the bottom of the landing page, the home page, you can sign up for our NFIP CRS Update newsletter, and that always has a lot of training information in it. So today we've covered a few basics, a little bit about the organization of the coordinator's manual, some on the credits and the credits needed to reach certain classes. We've talked about both the costs and the benefits, and certainly we hope our benefits outweigh the costs. How to apply, how to get started, that letter of interest, talk to the state or region about being in compliance with the NFIP, and ISO will take it from there. Some of who you should think about should be the coordinator and the responsibilities of the coordinator and the importance of coordinating and not putting it all on one person. And then I hope I've given you a good cross-section of all of our different resources that we have available to you to learn more. And if you're already in the program, to also improve in the number of points and improve in classes. And that concludes what I have to say today. Megan and Cindy and Luke, I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone might have.
Yes, Molly, during your presentation, we had a question from Emily. Has there been any research or evaluation to determine how much the flood insurance program saves communities or saves from communities implementing actions to reduce risk? And so that was the first question. I don't know if it'd be, and then we have a second question. What is the value of the avoided impacts for community well-being and local economy? So the first question was about the actual National Flood Insurance Program and any research or evaluation to determine the how much the program saves by communities implementing these activities.
We do know that the quickest way to recover from a disaster is to have flood insurance. And they know that for a couple of reasons. And one is that when you're fortunate enough to have a flood and have a disaster declared, and I know that sounds funny, but there's a lot of floods that happen in our country where disaster assistance does not come and help you. So we know your only resource or avenue for getting assistance to recover from the flood, whether it's just reconstruct, but ideally mitigate and reconstruct, is from the National Flood Insurance Program. When there is a disaster declared, our most recent ones, Harvey in Texas and Irma in Florida, the numbers are something like a flood insurance policy average claim amount was over $100,000, but the most you could get on individual assistance was about $4,500. So that leaves a huge gap for people to either find loans or some other way to put themselves back in their home or find alternate housing. So we do know people recover much quickly. FEMA has a moonshot that they're trying to increase the number of flood insurance policies in the nation by double in the next 5 years. And this is very important to them because there are so many flood survivors who are not financial survivors. It's devastated them. And then, as I mentioned, when I said repetitive loss, we know people get flooded again and again and again. So insurance coupled with the opportunities to mitigate, we know it makes people more resilient, homes more resilient, and the benefits to communities are just enormous. And so then the other question, Megan, was?
I think you may have answered it, but I'll ask it again. What is the value of the avoided impacts for community well-being and the local economy?
Oh, that, I did partially answer that, but that is a huge research topic. And researchers, universities, and other not-for-profits are trying to investigate what that means when a community really says we're going to address our flood issues. And remember, flooding is natural. The flood damage isn't. We're putting houses, buildings, infrastructure, other things where we shouldn't be putting them, and they are getting damaged. And so there's a lot of interest to say what have communities done for their economy by having higher standards, and having higher standards maybe for the last 25 years, or we're taking on new actions now to protect against future flood damages. I'll give an example since we have a minute. The city of Ottawa in Illinois, it's at the confluence of the Illinois River and another larger river called the Fox River. And they've had a study going on to watch the floods that have come by since they took some pretty aggressive actions and took on some big projects to protect their community from flood damage. So they're actually watching the floods, predicting what the damages would have been, and seeing what they're saving or what damage never happened. And it's something like eightfold. It's 8 to 1. It's just absolutely enormous. And our challenge with flooding in our country is we don't hear from communities that don't get flood damage. We don't hear of the smart choices that their elected officials or building officials or floodplain managers made years ago. We only hear about communities that maybe didn't make the best choices or are impacted by communities upstream and the urbanization upstream. So we know that there's some benefits out there. We've just never quantified them all.
Okay. Thank you for fully answering that question. And it's good to hear that that's something that's looking into being researched more for having a better understanding of what are the benefits for these communities to have avoided impacts, but then also to be more resilient.
I should just point out this slide shows the cover of the flood insurance manual, or the photo that's on our CRS coordinator's manual, not the insurance manual. But we were very intentional in picking this sunny day flood that goes by with a park bench, and there are no damaged structures in the distance there. And that is kind of our big goal when it comes to all flooding, that we let the floods go ahead and happen and be natural, and we don't see any damage.
Yes, as we wait for more questions, I had attended a presentation where they had talked about having room for the river and making sure that as storms occur, that there's enough room for the river to be able to take on that increased water flow. So it's great to see communities, and I know communities in the Saginaw Bay region are implementing that as well.
Yeah. This photo happens to be from Indiana, by the way.
Molly, I wanted to extend my thanks again for presenting. This is really informative for communities moving forward. And I guess maybe I do have a question. So if you are a community that's looking into trying to get a coordinator, do you know of any grants that are available that could potentially help to fund that position, or is that something that individual communities should look to for local funds?
I don't know of any grants. We have a limitation in our program that we're not able to fund communities for participating in the program or fund their activities. But people have used Sea Grant. I want to say Barnstable County, where Cape Cod is in Massachusetts, is doing that sort of thing. We've seen other regional funding and some state funding to try and assist, but by and large, that's a very small cross-section of communities. By and large, communities are using their own local funds and using existing staff to do the program.
Thank you again, Molly, for presenting, and thank you all so much for attending this webinar and the entire webinar series.